Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Radiator Arms, the podcast with a higher audience approval rating than Stop or My Mum Will Shoot. Today, we're talking all of those things that even driving enthusiasts get wrong out on the road and track. Enjoy. So, as ever, today we have the classic lineup of myself, James, aka JayEmm on cars, flanked by my beautiful wingmen to the left, Ant from Sports and Touring, and of course, JayEmm and Friends.
That would be me, accompanied by my AI-powered friend. But a non-AI-powered friend is our friend Will the Plank.
Hello, everybody. It is me. I am him, and I am here in your ear.
And a lovely person you are too to have nearby.
Oh, thank you. What do you want? 20 quid, 30?
Yeah, I'll do.
Cool.
Near enough. Okay, that's VAT deductible, by the way. All right, and so to get us kickstarted, we've done something a little bit unusual, and we've let Ant run riot with all of his mini computer pals and generate us a list of things the internet, I'm going to be an old person now and just call it the internet when we mean something really specific, has told us meets our criteria. So, Ant, take it away.
So, ChatGPT thinks that things that even car enthusiasts get wrong about driving is thinking power equals skill. I have no idea what that means.
Well, do they mean that, having a high horsepower car just means you're a better driver? Because I think maybe a few people think that, but not many, I would say. I don't think that counts.
We can move on from that one. Yeah. But this next one is actually a good one. Mm-hmm. Confusing grip with good handling.
Oh, yeah, I want to come back to that one. Yep, okay. Yep.
Do you want to go through the whole list and we'll talk
let's
about
go through
them?
the list and we'll go back. Yeah.
Okay. Some people believe that tyres don't make that much difference. And to be fair, I know of a lot of people who spent loads of money on coilovers and then put cheap tyres on their cars.
Yeah, although I think still, for the average driver, I think a lot of them are probably maybe not ignorant, but unaware of the impact of good quality tyres or even just simply safe, fresh tyres. However, your driving enthusiast, we talk about tyres a lot, so I think that can be discounted as well.
Yeah, well, we're talking about car enthusiasts, not necessarily driving enthusiasts, because I do think there is a difference, personally.
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah. There's overlap, without a doubt. But anyway, next one, assuming loud equals fast.
I think we all know it's not true, but that doesn't stop us from believing.
Especially when you get the 50cc moped going by the house. Oh, he's doing 100, he is. No, he's doing about 10.
29.9.
Yeah, exactly, 29.9.
Yeah. But if it's louder, it does feel faster. Like if I'm out in Damani's RX-8 with the, full exhaust versus my RX-8 with the stock exhaust, his car seems faster, even if it's actually
I would
not
actually
that much
say
faster.
again, this is a thing that non-car people are more guilty of. In fact, the really specific example I'll give is, and I've told both of you about this, when we're doing our drive-by shots, it's when you're some distance away from me and you're actually slowing down to turn around, it's the downshift, the boom, boom, that noise. Like, to any car enthusiast, that signifies a car going slower. But normal people hear that and just think, oh, racy car, loud noises, going fast. No, that's not the case.
Actually, so studies have been done where people's perception of a car's speed is a lot, that they overestimate how fast it's going based on how it sounds. But I think for the average car enthusiast, they can tell the difference between a car that is like, your impersonation of the moped.
Yeah.
We can tell that it's not really going fast because it's taken quite a long time for it to actually go past us despite the sound.
Yep.
Also true of some of the 1.1 litre Ford Fiesta owners in my local area.
In their eco booms.
Yeah. Eco booms, yeah. Okay. Driving fast but driving poorly. I don't know what that really is supposed to mean, but I think that
I know what that means. I think it's when you can drive fast, but how
Is this 30 drivers?
I think it's more like actually a lot of the time fast driving looks far more controlled, and the people that are kind of out of control and doing like that probably aren't going as far. Think about drifting. Drifting looks really fast, but compared to somebody going around a track cleanly, they're probably going faster. Do you know what I mean? I think it might be a little bit of that kind of thing. Maybe.
I think it's just ChatGPT getting its knickers in a twist.
Oh, yeah, I think it's getting confused. Right. Moving on. I think it's got this wrong. Thinking old equals more engaging. I think generally speaking, it's true that older cars are more engaging. That's been my experience.
Yeah, no, actually, older and also cheaper cars.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they're more basic, more simplistic, less systems intervening, less focus on comfort and so on and so forth. So actually, I tend to find even some modern cars, actually, to be honest, a bit like your Spring.
Yeah.
You know, because they haven't really spent any time developing fancy multi-point suspension systems and this and the other. It's quite a basic agricultural experience, but it's fun.
And slightly scary with the old tyres that it had on it. But the stock tyres are terrifying. But there is a review of the car out on the channel right now with Will. So make sure you go and check it out, because that is one of the things that he talks about, what tyres it comes with and what tyres he put on it now. Yep. So next one is braking late and hard to feel heroic.
Yeah, I think that's people thinking they're on a track, isn't it?
Yeah. That can be quite dangerous, because if you're approaching a junction, for example, and braking really, really late, and you're braking just enough to make it to the give way line, and then some kid runs across the road, you've got zero room for error.
Yeah.
So that's probably not an ideal thing to be doing. But on the track, generally speaking, braking hard at the start of the process and then easing out of it. So the hardest part of the braking is at the beginning of the process rather than at the end of the process. Would certainly be true. People misunderstanding weight transfer. Yes, very much, especially on track. I think people are thinking about steering and braking being just about slowing the car down, but it's not. It's about transferring the weight so you can get the grip where you need it.
So it's one of the things when it comes to weight transfer, I've always thought of, especially with like cars like the Spring, it's a case of setting yourself up for the corner and making sure the car is already kind of leaning over and pushing over before you go in, so it's not getting unsettled and suddenly doing weird things. Am I right? And that's how weight transfer really is? Or how would you define what for people who may not know or understand how you should be saying it, the weight transfer? How would you define that?
Well, I think on the road and on the track is a bit different.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the principles are the same.
Yeah.
But on the track, obviously, you're doing this just more at an extreme. But for example, if you're going into a corner, you want more weight over the front wheels at the point that you're turning, because that gives your front wheels more grip and it allows the rear to rotate around more easily with less steering input. And when you are coming out of the corner, particularly on a rear-wheel drive car, what you want is the weight to be on the back, so you've got more grip on the rear to push you out of the corner. So that's one element of it. The other element is when you are turning in and the weight goes to the outside, you want it to be on the outside front tyre more, then on the outside rear tyre, and then it's going to be the least on the inside. And that's because that gives you the most grip on the outside to then, again, get the car to rotate into the corner. That's
kind of how I've understood it to be.
Probably the most famous example of weight transfer on the road is the old Porsche 911, where a lot of people, particularly in the early days, crashed them because they fundamentally misunderstood how the car worked. What they would do is go into a bend quite hot, and they were actually going to get through the bend, but halfway through they became a little bit uncertain, so they lifted. And what then happened is the rear, which of course in a 911 is also where the engine is, has lots of the weight. And when you're in a bend in a rear-wheel drive car, you want that weight on the back doing its job, and so everything was fine. When you lift, particularly if you lift suddenly, weight is released from those rear wheels, and then what can happen is the force of the car being pushed down by the acceleration, the speed, the weight of the engine, and all that, then becomes overtaken by the force of, I suppose you could call it the centrifugal force or so, wouldn't you? The force that's trying to push the rear of the car out towards the edge of the turn. There's no longer enough grip, but that force is still there. Ergo, you have a spin, and you had the spin because you panicked, you upset the car. By and large, to be honest, on both road and track, the general thing is be smooth. And when you see people set really hot laps, they generally don't look that fast because they're doing what they're doing.
That is what I was going on about earlier compared to looking fast and being fast kind of thing when I was talking about that. Is like, smoother is generally faster.
If you're on track with somebody and it feels like you're on like a rickety old roller coaster ride, there's a very good chance they're not actually a very good track driver. Because the seriously fast guys I've been out with, like the properly quick, we're talking slicks and wings things, the forces are incredible, but you're not being thrown around in the car. Like they're just very, very controlled. Anyway, next on the list.
I think the main point I want to sort of just underline before we move on from that topic was the about weight transfer. Is I think that a lot of people they're not thinking about the weight transfer when they're steering or braking or accelerating. But if you understand what's happening, then you'll know why you actually. Yeah. Why you on a track you brake hard at the beginning and then ease out as you're turning in, and that's about then by the time you're at the apex, the car is now neutralized and flat, so that when you start to apply the power, it starts to squat and then it pushes you round the outside. And it's like not really understanding the relationship between weight transfer and the grip that you have and need in different situations, I think is the main point there.
If you play video games, there's quite a few games, including stuff like Forza, where you can actually press a button and it will actually show you exactly what load each tyre is getting. So it's actually a really interactive, direct way of seeing what happens, the physics of it.
Right, next one on the list is thinking that short shifting is slow, brackets turbo myth.
That's a really juicy one. I like that one because there is a huge amount of truth to that. Not just with turbo cars either.
No, for example, when my son Damani was racing, the peak torque was about, I think, 600 or 700 RPM before the red line. So if he wanted to get the maximum performance, then he actually wanted to change earlier in order to get the most out of the car. Whereas a lot of people think that, well, you want to take it to the red line every time. Now, that can be fun, but for the most part, if you look at the torque curve on any car, it tends to start to fall off as it approaches the red line. So you would probably only hold it up to the red line if changing gear at that point would compromise you in some other way. So if you're, if the optimum point from a power point of view would be to change gear now, but the next corner is the equivalent of another 500 RPM, then actually take it to the red line because you'll lose less from the torque drop off than the gear shift. Whereas if you've got another half of the straight still to go, then you shift up slightly earlier in order to get the most out of the car. So, arguably also that's not necessarily just short shifting. Also, you're thinking about, if you're coming out of a bend, and if you're in second gear, for example, mid-corner, and you start to put the power on, it might be that because of the nature of the bend as you're coming out is like a very long bend, it might be that you're to use all of the torque for the whole time, all the way through second gear, you might not be able to use it all, and then you might actually unsettle the car by shifting. So there might be actually better for you to, as you come out of that corner, to short shift into third and because you can't go any faster because you're limited by lateral grip, not by power. So you might be better off short shifting so that when you're no longer limited by lateral grip and then by power, you're then at the optimum point in third gear, for example. So that's another way short shifting can actually be better.
It's basically a really rudimentary form of traction control.
Essentially, yeah, exactly. And you there's absolutely no point having it in second gear, and then at the point when third gear becomes useful changing, because now you're losing the time on the gear shift when you can lose that at a point in time. There's a corner at Brighton just like that. After it's the after the first left right where you're it's like this long curve that takes you out onto the straight.
Yes.
You can't really use the lower gear for too much of that. So you
Is it
can
that big kind of left-handery bend?
big.
Yeah, get
I
it
always
back
find
straight,
myself in the Mini needing to change up into third because I'm just like kind of running out and just going like,
Yeah.
that's the one I'm thinking about. So there's
Yeah,
some continuation going on. It's like I normally wouldn't change gear. Feels a bit weird in the middle of a corner, but there it's kind of like you kind of actually kind of need to because then you're not going anywhere anymore. You can't make any more progress.
Yeah. Again, because you're limited not by power, but by lateral grip. You can't put any more power down without in the case of the Mini, the front end washing out.
Yeah.
And in a case of a rear wheel drive car, then all that's really going to happen is the back end is going to start to step out, and that's not making you go any faster either. So short shifting on that particular bend can be useful. Oh, I missed one. Treating ESP/traction control like the enemy.
Oh, that is such a rookie
Ugh.
mistake. Now, I'll caveat this by saying in some cars, in some situations, they are. For example, our Minis, the track cars, particularly the one with the limited slip differential in it, the traction control is quite aggressive. And it cuts in quite early, and particularly when you're on a circuit where you've got a bit of room for the thing to move around the road anyway, I prefer just to let the diff do its work, and then you as the driver interpret when you're asking too much of it or not. On the road, I don't think I'd probably leave it off because, it's there to help you after all. But particularly in very high-powered cars, 400 or 500 horsepower plus, and ones that have got hybrid systems, turbos, all-wheel drive, all sorts of complicated things. The car's traction control systems can do things you are physically... Imagine like the car's got the equivalent of 4 brake pedals and 3 accelerator pedals. It can do stuff you just can't.
Well, I have a little example of this. The other day I was driving my dad's 5 Series, and it's just 190 horsepower 520D. I was going around a corner, and I had constant throttle applied. I wasn't even going fast, and it decided that it just wanted to snap a little bit at me, and I was like, really? And like I didn't have to think. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm used to it. I could have just pulled it back in fine, but the car just did it for me. I'm like, this is odd. It's just a bit greasy outside, I think, and I'm like, that is one of those things that why would I turn off the traction control while daily driving when that just saved me having to think.
Yeah, and even the Ferrari test drivers will tell you now with some of their high-end cars like the SF90s, things like that, they set their lap records with the traction at least partially on.
Yeah.
Because again, it can just do things that they're incapable of. It's one of the reasons in motorsport why it typically is, with some exceptions, a lot of electronic aids are banned, partly because they're expensive to develop, but also it is a way of trying to keep the speeds down.
So most GT racing, they have traction control and ABS, and the reason for that is because it's mostly customer racing. They'll have a pro driver and they'll have an amateur who's paid hundreds of thousands of pounds for the year to race in that series, and because those drivers aren't pro drivers, they're generally amateurs or what some people call pro-am, where they're just
Shared.
the pro-am drivers are usually amateur drivers who have a certain level of experience, but they're still not considered pro drivers because the pro level is an even more experience, usually more to do with experience than whether it's your career or not. But basically they want the cars to remain drivable for this person who flies in on his helicopter, drives this race car around so he can brag to his mates that he was raced at Zandvoort in a Ferrari whatever car,
challenge car,
and then jumps in his helicopter to fly home again. So yeah, a lot of them do have that, but I do think a lot of people think that it's like there's a thing called cargo culting, right? And it's like it's this whole old story about an island in, I think it was the Pacific, that was occupied by, I think, the US military during the Second World War. And during that time, there was also indigenous people on this island. And what would happen is the indigenous people would see these people, dressed in a certain way. They had a tower, and they had these sort of like semaphore beacons and flags. And what would happen is these planes would fly over, and they would do a cargo drop and a supply drop. And sometimes the supply drop would be a bit off target and the indigenous people would raid it and steal all the food. And then when the war was over and the military left, they saw that the cargo plane stopped coming. So they thought, well, that's obviously because there's no tower there anymore. So they built some tower that looked like a tower out of wood. And then they thought, oh, it's because no one's waving flags. So they waved the flags thinking that that's what made the planes come. But what they didn't realize is that those people were doing the things because the plane was coming. It was not the thing that was making the planes come.
Yeah.
So it's like people believe that if they turn off the traction control, it must mean that they're a driving god. But no, you turn off the traction control when you're a driving god, not in such a way that it makes you a driving god. And I think that's the thing, that it's more like bragging rights. Yeah, as soon as I get into my 800 horsepower, yada, yada, I switch off the traction control because I'm a real man.
Yeah, I'm not a driving god, so it stays firmly on.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm doing a review and I see the traction control light flash up in a scenario where I wasn't trying to provoke it, I consider that a failure of me as a driver, because it means that there was something going on or something on that road that I hadn't spotted or I wasn't aware of. Now, on occasion, I will have a car where you'll see that light going on and you'll go, well, this is not right. It's 30 degrees. The tyres are good. Conditions are good. There is no obvious hazard on the road. Like, the car hasn't got enough power. Then somebody might point to a fault with the car. Mm-hmm. But yeah, by and large, like that, and I've seen people driving as well, and they terrify me. They absolutely terrify me. Where they also drive, basically using, like, leaning on that traction control. And I've seen it. The scary ones are stuff like BMW 1 Series and whatnot. The M140i's, loads of power, loads of torque because turbo, tiny wheelbase, relatively small width tires as well. And you see these cars, and the whole thing's like the rear is nudging out all the time. And some traction control systems are really nice. The intervention is very smooth. It's very delicate. With the BMW, it's just going no, 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 no. And I see people doing this, and I'm like, your car is trying to tell you to back off, and you're just ignoring it. Because we all treat these systems sometimes like they're infallible. And that, I think, is a mistake also made by people that consider themselves good drivers. Like, no. The system was there and it saved you, but you should not assume that it's going to be there to save you every single time, because the slightest variable could put the whole thing out of whack. And you don't want to be that guy who crashed his car because I put my foot down, thought it was going to do it all.
You know what? There is a saying, and it goes, you can't escape the laws of physics.
Yeah, I think actually Porsche put that in one of their manuals for the 911.
Did they really?
There you go.
No, seriously, they're in like 996 or so, when their stability management started coming in for some of the cars, they actually had a bit basically saying, like, the stability management cannot alter the laws of physics. Like, if you're going into a bend at like 150 mile an hour and it's a 50 mile an hour bend, you're still going to have a bad day, whether it's on or off.
You see, those early tapping controls are the equivalent of your mate tapping you on the shoulder and going, "Oh, slow down a bit, mate." Yeah. That's your mate can't do anything from there, but like, it's just telling you to stop being a bit of a tit. And then your mate sitting in the car after you spinned it and put it at the roof, then going, "I told you so."
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things I've actually quite enjoyed about having the time on track that we have of late, is that is the place to explore what happens, particularly if you've got a car with different traction modes. There are some of the tracks we go to, there are places where you go, okay, all right, I know I've got the room that if something does go wrong here, I'm not any immediate danger to myself or anybody else. And, you've got a fair idea of what the car should do. And, I've been really enjoying sort of with the Ferraris and that experimenting, going like, okay, let's just take it one notch further over than I would on the road, and let's get you a real appreciation for the car. And sometimes I've actually come out really surprised, going, do you know what? I didn't previously have a huge amount of faith in this car in this condition, but now I do. Because now I've taken the traction away and gone, no, actually, all right, it's good. It's got the grip.
And this is exactly what I mean by the difference between a car enthusiast and a driving enthusiast. I think some people can be a car enthusiast, but also not really understand driving very well. And in fact, I can tell you just by looking at some people, just even their seating position and where their hands are on the wheel and what they're doing while they're driving, I can tell you they're not driving enthusiasts straight off the bat.
I always, with my seating position, have it in a place where my hands can rest on the top of the steering wheel, and I still know that my shoulder's going to be back in the seat. So if I need to make, or my wrist rests, so if I need to make a sudden adjustment, I can still make that adjustment and know that I'm going to be vaguely in control.
So the easy way to tell that is both shoulders in the seats, arms straight out in front of you, and your wrists should be on top of the steering wheel.
That's exactly
that's
how I do it.
about the right bend. Yeah,
That's the back seat for you in the spring, isn't it?
I have it back apart from one click. Like it could go one click more, and I probably could sit there more, but I just feel a little bit more in control with that one click ever so slightly forward.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that's what I mean. But there's a difference. As you said about some people expecting cars just to sort things out for them. I think in a recent episode I talked about I was at a garden party, as you do. And then you said, as you do. Well, this time I was at a dinner party, as you do. And
As you do.
Exactly. And it was kind of around Christmas time, and one of the guests had recently binned their Mercedes. And, I said, oh no, what happened? And she said, well, I was just driving it normally, and when I turned the wheel, it just went straight on. I went, what? So it just understeered? She went, well, what do you mean understeer? And I went, well, that means when you turn by a certain amount and then the car just goes straight, that's understeering. And she was like, I said, what did you do? She said, well, I kept trying to turn the wheel. I was like, I said, that's probably where it went wrong. So what you wanted to do is straighten the wheel up to regain grip, and then feel where the grip was to then get whatever turn you could get with the grip you had available, because it was in the snow, it turned out. And she said, well, I think that's ridiculous. The car shouldn't let me do that in the first place. I went, sorry, what? And I was like, she goes, well, the car shouldn't let me do that. I was like, well, how would the car know that you're going to need to turn that corner and that you're going too fast? How would it? I don't understand. Now, this was a few years ago. So yeah, there are some cars that now have GPS and they know what road you're on and all sorts of other things. But this was not one of those cars.
And steer by wire.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, so how would the car have stopped you doing that? And she was like, well, it's, with all these modern systems, it just shouldn't be possible. I went, it would have to be a self-driving car, and your car doesn't have that, does it? And she was like, well, no, but it just shouldn't let me do it. It shouldn't be possible. And this is the thing. I think it's a bit like the old days of in America, where people thought cruise control meant that the car was self-driving.
Honestly, people like that, I just want to grab them and go like, why are you hitting yourself, Joan? Why are you hitting yourself? Stop. Why are you hitting yourself? Like, you shouldn't be able to do that. No.
But people do place way too much faith. In fact, I worry about that, to be honest, that there's so many safety systems in cars now that actually it's making things more dangerous, because people will rely on them and they won't necessarily be able to.
No, you go first. Well, you beat me to the punch.
I find that people out on the roads are paying less attention than ever before, and their driving is far more relaxed. I think it's part of the fact that cars are so isolated as well, that, less cabin noise, maybe with like some higher end electric cars, like no noise whatsoever, and it's all thick, and you're so cushy and comfortable, it's taken away that kind of sense of, oh, if I get this wrong, I could die, to, I've got loads of airbags and 5-star and this and that.
Okay, so can I say, because I think actually this is on topic, because this is something that I hear car enthusiasts say all the time. This whole notion of, all these driving nannies have bred a generation of people that don't know how to drive, because back in my day we had cross-ply tyres and this, that and the other. No, I'm going to call bull droppings, right? Because what I think this is a lesson in survivor bias, right? So you're right. There are all these people out there all driving as if they're invincible, invulnerable, that their car should do everything in its power to personally save them from themselves. However, these are the same sorts of people, in some cases the exact same people who 40 years ago drove cars that had no ABS, had no traction control, had no stability control, had paper-thin A-pillars, were made out of materials that today would be considered unfit to wrap a sandwich in, let alone a person and their family. they just drove badly then and suffered far greater consequences.
Yep.
They just died. That's what happened. Your friend driving her car in the snow, back in the day, she would have just gone off the road, straight through the windscreen, because she might have felt that, seatbelts were a bit nanny state for her,
Yep.
and she would be dead. Like, whereas now the car at least goes, all right, you can't save yourself, can you? I suppose I'll have to intervene with me airbags and me crash structure and me crumple zones and everything else, and basically sort of like leap in front of that bullet that you fired towards yourself, like a presidential security guard, I don't know. It's one of these that winds me up a lot, as you can probably tell.
For the record, it was not my friend.
Okay. A person that Ant once met.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Right, another one. Believing that manuals make you a better driver.
That sounds like quite an American thing to say, because in Britain, knowing how to drive a manual just makes you
Normal.
a driver.
Yeah.
Although it is a skill that is rapidly being lost.
Yep.
Because a lot of people now that want to drive don't want to bother with manuals, which I think is brilliant, because it leaves more for us.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's largely because they're expecting to buy an EV and not ever buy
an EV or an automatic, or even now the vast majority of HGVs on the road I think are now automatic as well, because they started transitioning a few years back, and I think it's largely fuel savings and various different things that the gearboxes got better, the technology got better, and I think especially for an HGV, if it saves money, they'll do it.
Yep, exactly. And so again, it goes back to the thing. It's like, is it because is having a manual make you a better driver, or is it that you're a better driver, therefore you drive a manual?
Also, you know what? If I was going to build another high-end track car, obviously we've got a few track cars that we're doing for the Radiator Arms and whatnot, but they're much lower value stuff. If I was going to build myself a proper track car, I wouldn't want a manual. And it's got nothing to do with the speed of it or anything else. It's just the fact that I don't want to be able to money shift the damn thing.
Yeah.
I don't want one moment of stupidity or getting distracted, or heck, a bushing going at an inopportune moment, meaning that I lunch potentially my engine and gearbox, which could be a pretty darn big bill. So, for me, I think there's situations in which I go, no, I'm very, very happy for the car to have an automatic of some description. They're not all built equal.
Yeah, BMW actually did develop a manual gearbox that you could not money shift. But they never brought it to the market in the end.
So
Too expensive.
motorbikes for a while had something really interesting, which I think in a car was probably going to be impractical, called a slipper clutch. And basically what that would do is, as you're on the approach to a corner and you downshift, what it would do is it would effectively, deliberately do what it says on the tin, involve an element of slip until the speeds matched again. To, I think, help you stop you over revving. I might be misremembering this terribly, but it was like an essential thing. If you're going to track a bike or race a bike properly, you want one of those in there, because what it'll do is it'll stop the thing just locking up instantly, locking a rear wheel potentially, and then obviously throwing you off. But yeah.
But I think there's another story that I just remembered that I think helps make sense of this. So years ago, there was some research that was done looking at different people and what web browsers they were using, and also looking at other characteristics of those individuals. And what they found is that people who used Chrome or Opera browsers, or other
Firefox and stuff like that.
non-standard, Firefox, non-standard browsers. So if they were on Windows, they're basically not using Internet Explorer or Edge as it was. Or if they're on a Mac, they're not using Safari. What they found was that those people tended to be more creative individuals, and sometimes showing signs of greater intelligence. So once this kind of became known to a number of people, it was kind of popularized via some TED Talk. People thought if they changed their browser, that would make them more creative. But the point was, it's the more creative people chose to go outside of the box, to use something different, to try and look for and seek out improvements in their ability to get their work done. And it's the same thing here. If you're whatever driver you are, choosing a manual does not make you a better driver as a result. But better drivers probably do choose a manual.
Well, I just want to say I haven't been using Internet Explorer since the early 2000s, and Edge can get in the bin, and I've never used it.
All I'm saying is that, like James Bond and Arnie, Netscape Navigator will be back.
Oh, yes.
Good old
I used
days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you had to wait for individual elements of the page to load?
And
You're like, I can read the text, and then 5 minutes later, the picture they're talking about will probably be. Do you remember when it loaded in stages? Didn't it? You get like
Yes.
it was like some sort of like 90s spy movie. You're like enhance, enhance, enhance. That's that.
So do
wasn't
you know what we started to do then?
Mm-hmm.
So what we started to do is as soon as you went to the website, we would start preloading all of the other images that you might then need in the background while you're reading that page, so that when you click on the next page, it's just there instantly.
Yeah.
Didn't Netscape Navigator have that globe that would spin and the
Yeah.
thing around it in the corner?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Oh, wow. I feel old.
I actually worked on Netscape Server as well.
Ooh.
Well, I didn't actually develop Netscape Server, but I used it for a web app back in the day, in the 1998, I think it was.
I can hear his back cracking when he remembers that far back.
Anyway, let's talk about people overestimating their own road driving abilities.
Is that the Dunning-Kruger curve?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you know what Dunning-Kruger is?
Isn't it something like there's people, you've explained this before, it's like there are people that are actually more likely to be better at things, and they tend to be the ones that like are more conservative or something like that, or the ones that are more likely to be able to do it. Was it? Explain it again.
Stop guessing. I'll
Yeah,
just explain
Yeah,
it.
that's the best way.
Save us all time.
I,
Yeah.
I will say this.
So, guaranteed, someone in the comments will say, "Oh, yes, but Dunning-Kruger has been challenged and discredited in a number of different ways." Yeah, sure, fine. But actually, there is still a truth. So, essentially, a pair of psychologists, Dunning-Kruger, amazing, huh? Yeah. Did some research, and what they found was that there's like a curve where the less you know about something, the more you think you know about it, and the more you know about something, the less you think of your own abilities in that thing. It was very much more characteristic in Western countries rather than in places like Japan, for example. It was almost like the opposite in Japan, because there was the theory being that there's this concept of deference to the master, and you assume you know nothing until the master tells you you know something, as in martial arts culture. But in Western culture, and more so in America than anywhere else, apparently.
Surprise, surprise.
Yep. It was slightly less in places in Europe and the UK, but the biggest gap was in America. So it's like the less you know about something, the less you know that you don't know.
It's two phrases exemplify it very well. One of which is, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
And the other, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. I would have it all the time when we were on film sets and things, and you get the new trainee in who's basically hardly worked in film, full stop. And the first day, they're okay because they know nothing, right? And you teach them some of like the absolute basics, like you've got your logic running over here, right, recording what we're doing, and you could go, okay, James, if you want to record something here, you just label these tracks, you click here, and then click up there and it will record, right? And you've told me in real basic terms how to make it work, but you also know there are 100 different ways I could screw that up, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't know that. I just know one way to do it right, and I assume that I've done it right. And it's the exact same thing, where it's only when you've actually got experience with something you go, okay, oh my God. Like, I know both of you guys have had issues with DaVinci or whatnot, where you've gone like, why is it doing this? And sometimes it seems to be really, really like stuff that's so simple you can't understand how it can not be working. And then it's just because I've had the misfortune of working with it for longer, I go, you know, I know exactly what's going on. And I only know that because at one point it did the same thing to me. And I also spent hours going, why is it doing this? And then usually the answer is really, really simple, but it'll do these things to you. And yeah, obviously with driving, you've then got the benefit of a 2 or maybe even heavier ton vehicle moving at high speeds, which can do silly things if you're not paying attention to it, and it can all go belly up fast. Tell you one thing I want to add into this little list, by the way, inspired by a video that I saw on Instagram the other day, people not knowing what hydroplaning is.
Oh gosh.
Right, because I saw a chap basically lose control of an Aston Vantage, new shape one, I think it was, and he was, I hydroplaned. But there's a clip of it, and you're like, no, you didn't hydroplane. What you did was you put your foot down on the exit of a bend when it's soaking wet. There wasn't enough water for you to hydroplane. There just wasn't enough there, but you just lost control of the car. That's what happened. And I've known a number of people like, hydroplaned. You're like, did you though? Because actual hydroplaning is really rare. Like, it's not to say that it doesn't exist, because it absolutely does, and I have experienced it. But
it's terrifying.
Yeah, it's really terrifying. But most of the time, when people say they lost control of a car because it hydroplaned, no, it didn't. Same goes for the that old classic. I hit a patch of diesel. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You just done screwed up.
I've actually been in a car hydroplaning once. It's actually my friend Matthew from Hybrid Tune, who, for those playing along at home, I went to school with. And he was in his Rover 416, and we were coming back from mine to his house in about 2010, and we were kind of like overtaking in the rain. And I remember him going and doing the overtake, and I was like, this is weird. He's going by, but the car is kind of like at a strange angle. And then somehow he managed to get it in, and he was like, well, I had absolutely no grip there. I had no idea what the car was doing, and I have no idea how we didn't hit a tree. But we're on the road now, and that's going okay. So that is the only time I've ever really experienced hydroplaning and been like, yeah, that was real scary. I don't think I've ever hydroplaned myself while driving. I've been gone into puddles and felt the car go woo like that, but never lost control.
Not the same thing.
Well, hang on. Hydroplaning doesn't mean you necessarily lost control. What it means is that your tyres and the road are separated by water.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily bin it. Like, it's happened to me where I've been on the motorway, everything looks fine, you're kind of going along at around 50 miles an hour, and then because of the visibility, whatever, there's this puddle, you couldn't see it because of the way that the reflections were or whatever. You suddenly hit this puddle, and then your car just does that.
Yeah.
And for the benefit of those listening, I'm making hand motions where the hand's wiggling from side to side.
Like a fishy.
Fishy.
Fishtailing.
And then, not fishtailing, but just kind of like wiggles a little bit, and then you get grip again, and then you're okay. And that can be quite a terrifying moment, but it doesn't mean you're necessarily, at that moment in time, technically, you are not in control of the car, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's like out of control.
Yeah. And of course, in cars like the Spring, which have very narrow tyres, you are far less likely to hydroplane. Yep. Motorcycles, again, because they've got almost pointy shaped tyres. And fun fact for you, and it's inspired by the fact that behind you is a pile of tyres, what a lot of people don't realise is that the tread on their tyres is not cut square very often. So people all think that the tread pattern on your tyre is exactly the same, and it's just one neat curve or one neat cut from top to bottom. It's actually, if you imagine you're looking at the cross section of a tyre, it's often a more triangular shape. So as your tread wears down, the tread, the grooves become wider to give your tyre more ability to displace that water, and avoiding hydroplaning is a large part of the reason that they do that. That's obviously why, in simple terms, wet tyres have more lines in them, because they need to shift more water, and then there'll become a point where it's not enough.
Yep. On Damani's race car, on the VW Golf, the wet setup had narrower wheels and narrower tyres for that exact reason.
Yep.
So the wet setup, and obviously the suspension was made softer as well, because you get more grip basically at that point, which is what's more important in the wet.
Yeah.
We kind of digressed off. I want to go back briefly to people overestimating their abilities.
Oh yeah.
What when you see someone driving, whether that's as you're overtaking them and you're seeing them sort of like at the wheel, or if you're a passenger with them, what are the big signs that person thinks they're a way better driver than they actually are?
I can tell you what they are. They are somebody usually leant all the way back in the seat with one hand on the steering wheel and a vape in the other hand while doing 90 miles an hour.
Well, okay, fine. Let's put the vape bit to one side. But yes, when people are
let's not single out Subaru drivers.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, let's talk about those two things. That goes back to seating position and steering wheel discipline, right? So I think people think that racing drivers are all like laid back, which is true in an F1 car, but that's for reasons of packaging. That's so that they can make the car as tight and small as possible. But if you look at someone in a touring car, they're actually sitting quite upright. So someone in a road car, if you look at them and they're leaning way back, usually it's because they think they're a bit racy, but actually that shows that they actually know nothing about being racy, because they will see how upright someone like in a touring car would sit. The other thing I think as well, which drives me nuts, and you've mentioned it here, I this guy was a friend of a friend, had this Range Rover with a bit of power, and me and my friend were going to go somewhere. His mate decided to come and hang out with us, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll bring my car." Cool, okay. So he picked us up, and we got in, and my friend said, who doesn't drive by the way, he says, "Oh yeah, he's a really good driver." I was like, "Yeah, I'm a really good driver," and I was like, I saw exactly that. Seat was leaning way back. I'm like, why do you even need it to lean that far back in a Range Rover? One hand on the top of the steering wheel, leaning over to one side, and then just flooring it everywhere, and then slamming on the brakes, and then going around the corners like, spinning the hand around the wheel thing.
Goodness.
Like it's a forklift.
Yeah, like it's a forklift type of thing. But obviously you're not holding the wheel. You have to,
palm it. Yeah.
You're palming it, right? And then we got to location, and then my mate was like, "He's a good driver, isn't it?" And I went, he was like, "What, you think I'm not a good driver?" And I went, "Well, look, no disrespect. I've sat next to some incredible drivers, and everything that you did is the opposite of what they would have done. So, sorry."
Really polite way of saying you're shit.
I said, "So sorry. And if you want me to get an Uber back instead of getting a lift, that's totally okay with me. I understand." He was like, "Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?" And it was just everything about his throttle, his brake, his seating position. Everything was just wrong. But he thought he was the best driver in the world.
Do you know what the problem is? The minute somebody told you he's a really good driver, that's
the first sign.
That's instantly to me when I'm like, nah, oh no, I don't. I think anyone that's passionate about anything can relate to this. Like, if you're a professional photographer and you get someone say, "Oh, my nephew, he's a really good photographer," you're like, "Is he? That's nice. Yeah, here's his Instagram." You're like, "Oh, this," and sometimes you go, "Actually, this is really good."
Yeah, sometimes.
Most of the time you go, "How old is he?" "He's 15. Yeah, well done. Yeah, that's nice.
There.
Yeah. And yeah, obviously I have it with YouTube stuff and everything. And people go, "Oh, I've done this thing that's amazing." You're like, okay. I mean, look, if it's your first time out, great. But it's not your first time out, is it? Like, have notes if you want them. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't.
Most people don't when it comes to driving.
No, most people really don't when it comes to driving.
What is it about driving that people think that no one can possibly know anything more than that? It's like an ego thing, is it? I don't know. What is it? Like a self-esteem thing?
I think it's because men, probably more like men, we all want to be good drivers. Blah, 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 blah.
I know just as many women who don't want to be told anything. In fact, my personal experience has been the other way around. The least interested in knowing anything about or hearing any feedback about driving, in my experience.
I just can't stop thinking about that guy, Tony. I'm just thinking about that song, what was about 10 years ago, Seaman driving a German whip, blacked out windows leaning back. Do you remember that one?
Yep.
That's kind of like the vibe I'm getting from this Range Rover guy.
Yeah. Do you know, the thing is though, if you're just cruising around, that's fine. If you're just cruising around slowly, taking it easy, enjoying your beats, not a problem. But if you're driving quickly, which this person decided they wanted to do, then that is not how you drive quickly. And that really bugs me. James will know, I made a whole video about this. I borrowed his F12 to do it as well because it's got such a great steering wheel. Just even the way people steer, like when they're doing spirited driving. If you're cruising along, really doesn't matter, right? If you're just cruising along, matters not. But when I see people driving quite fast in a spirited way, and then you see a hand on top of the steering wheel, or the two hands at 10 to 2, that's a no.
No, do you know the one? Do you know the one that gets me?
Oh,
And,
not the under one.
No. It's worse than that. It's worse than that. And we've actually got a mutual friend of ours who does this all the time. And I don't want to mention Chris's name because I want to embarrass him. But when he's going to do a turn, he does that. It's the hand
inside the
upside
top.
down inside the wheel. And
No.
And I've told him a few times before. It's like, in fact, before I let him drive the Ferrari, I was like, I'm not joking with you. If you do that more than once, I'll give you one time. I'll tell you off. If you do that a second time, like that's it. We stop out the car.
That's it.
Because I've also had, especially when you go to say stuff like the Ferraris, I've had people where they're very used to feeding the wheel all the time. You're like, no, don't do that. Now, Ben the Sparkle learned this when we were abroad because he's moving his hand on the wheel all the time, which he's used to in his car. And I was like, no, don't do that. Stop doing that. Now, in fairness to him, this is a very new car to him, very new concept to him. And after half a day, he's like, I see why you told me that. You really, because he's like, you got to scratch your nose in a Ferrari, like it'll move. It'll do something. You know, you guys have all experienced this now as well. And there are other cars out there that like it as well. It's not just Ferraris, but they're one of the first to do it and best known example. But yeah, what gets me about the hand inside the wheel thing is it's like you do understand that in the middle of that wheel is an explosive charge.
Yeah.
Right. And basically, if at this point in time somebody hasn't spotted the fact that and this is always doing it when making a turn. If somebody hasn't spotted the fact that you've stopped to make a turn and they go into the back of you, the first thing that's going to happen is an explosive charge will fire an airbag at 200 mile an hour through your wrist, right? Which will break. Then it'll go into your face. Oh, and it's like, this is all bad. Like, this is all undesirable outcome. You're like, you could just keep your hands on the outside of the wheel like a normal person. And I'm sorry, Chris, but you did deserve that if you're listening.
Yeah. I remember... Chris, bloody Chris. I remember...
It wasn't me.
I remember the first time when... the first and the only times I've driven the Scuderia. You were like... there's several things you need to do. You need to be kind of doing it more like this and moving more rather than feeding. Yeah. You need a lighter grip. You need to be pushing, like not pulling as well as some of these
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah. That's just good steering discipline for spirited driving. If you're in town and you're doing you're in a 20 mile an hour zone and you've got to slow down to go around a corner very slowly, push and pulling the steering wheel is fine. Yeah. Totally fine. In fact, it's probably favourable, right?
Yeah, there's always... It's just the correct technique for the situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, but if you're on a mountain pass where, there's this winding road and you're doing a good speed, there will never be a time, especially in the modern Ferrari, because they've got such fast steering rats, there will never be a time where you need to move your hand from 1/4 to 3. Because the most you'll ever get to is about there, and that's it.
And they made the rack that way for that exact reason, so you don't have to take your hands off the wheel.
And for people who are listening rather than watching, what I'm trying to show is that the hands in the 1/4 position, that when you turn the wheel even past the 90 degrees point, then you're still in control of the car and you can actually feel the most. And you should always push the wheel round, not pull.
What is the main reason for that? Explain, because it's weird. Like, it feels better when you push rather than pull. Why does it feel better?
So the reason for it, so if you're turning left, what you want to be doing is pushing up with your right hand. Your left hand is really only balancing and guiding at that point. It's not pulling at the same time. And the reason is that the feedback you get through the wheel gets transferred through the outside hand as it's pushing up. It's the right hand side of the car that gets loaded up, right? Which means that that's also the side that is loaded up on you. That it slightly increases the force into the steering wheel. That gives you the maximum feel of feedback through the wheel into your arm, into your shoulders, and that's why your shoulder needs to be back also on the seat as well, because that gives you the maximum sense of feel and of the feedback. This is why racing drivers do this. This is why they always have their hands.
There may also be that scenario whereby, we were talking about earlier about, you turn the wheel, the car starts understeering, and then some people have this instinct to just keep turning as if that's going to solve the problem. Well, there is very much a version of this in the world of track driving, whereby you often don't need to turn the wheel as much as you think, but there is that really delicate point where you'll start turning the wheel too much. and you make everything much worse. And if you're pulling the wheel, it can be quite easy to just take the car past that point, and you don't get as much feedback from it. Whereas when you're pushing, the car's always resisting you. The car's, generally speaking, always trying to get itself straight again. And so you'll have a little bit better feel. And it's a subtle difference, but quite an important one, particularly when you get into the high performance driving. Now, in my defense, actually not in my defense, in my conviction, I suppose, I did learn all of this stuff the hard way myself, because when I was younger, I got gifted the Palmer Sport experience as a 21st birthday present. And that was my first ever experience of driving a Caterham.
Oh.
And you're driving pretty full tilt on the Palmer Sport days. Like, you are really going for it.
They are really good.
And I had no experience of any high performance driving at all at that point. And halfway through the lap, I tried to feed the wheel in one of the tighter corners. And the instructor had to intervene very, very quickly. But I mean, I learned and I remembered.
And that's the thing. When you're feeding the wheel, you're essentially disconnecting or reducing the connection between the hand that is controlling it and the wheel itself. Now, there are exceptions to this. So if, for example, you're drifting, you can't keep 2/4 because you're going to have to be crossing your hands in order to control the wheel, because the speed at which you need to turn the wheel is too fast. Even in a situation where you might get oversteer, sometimes you do have to then release in order to catch the wheel, because it wants to turn more than you would ideally, but that's because you're oversteering, right? But for the most part, you want to maintain that connection between your hands and the wheel, and the optimum position is the one that is that is with you pushing on it to maximize the connection through your arm to your shoulder to your body.
Yeah. All right.
Right, we're nearly at the end, but I do want to say that in that conversation, a couple of things that ChatGPT predicted also came up.
Ooh.
So where we were talking about that, blaming understeer on the car, not the inputs.
Yeah, classic.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. We're just going to ignore this one about thinking stiff suspension means good handling.
I wonder why.
Yeah, you can't think. Yeah.
I never said stiff suspension meant good handling. I say it's just more fun.
Yeah.
Believing rear-wheel drive is always more fun didn't come up, but I think that's probably a topic for a future event when we're talking about the minis.
I used to believe it. And those minis and a great number of other cars I've been fortunate enough to drive proved me wrong.
Yep. This is an interesting one. Braking mid-corner when it's not needed.
I don't think that's something that... I think if you're doing that, you're not a driving enthusiast.
I disagree. Because you can use braking mid-corner to just balance the car.
But then it's needed.
Fair enough.
Good point. Well argued.
Yeah. Moving on.
Yep. Well, I could have argued my point to the bitter end, but
no, that ship was sinking. You knew it.
It was long gone.
It was admirable.
It was. Just call it the Titanic.
Yeah.
Right. I think we got through most of the topics today, except for one, which was using heel and toe as a flex, not a tool.
I don't think many people are impressed by heel and toe. Although I did humorously have a conversation with a friend of mine whose flatmate was trying to extol the merits of heel and toe, and it then transpired they didn't have a driving license.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, yeah, okay, get your driving license, come back, we'll talk about it.
The thing is, I learned to heel and toe because I was just interested in learning how to do it. And then when I learned how to do it, I then started to see where it was useful. And in fact, just making the car smoother, just shifting smoother to make it a more comfortable drive for people is actually, on a manual obviously, is the same thing. And it's like, the DCTs, single clutch automated gearboxes, all of they all do it. Why? Well, because it smooths out the gear shifts. So why wouldn't you do it? Now, obviously, if you're driving chill, very, very chill, it's hardly needed because the synchro basically, if you're shifting late enough, the synchro mesh does the work for you anyway. All right, it just gets the gears and everything. But if you're driving moderately spirited, then yeah, being able to heel and toe actually helps. Interesting thing, far less useful on front wheel drive cars, of course. but can still be useful.
Well, heel into. I was doing it all the way around the track in the Mini because that was it really made sense. You're hard on the brake and then give it a little.
I mean, it's generally easier to do it when you're driving harder.
Yeah,
Some cars, you're like, unless you're driving with intent, it's just the whole thing. I mean, some of them are even set so that the brake pedal is not even in the right place unless you're really leaning on it and so on. And some cars, it only works when you're at a certain bit of the rev range and all that. But I think I want to leave with just one final thought for the day, which I'm sure we can all agree on, which is maybe the one biggest and most dangerous misconception that anybody can have in a car, and we've alluded to it already. Fast driving does not equal good driving.
Oh, no, not at all.
Correct.
Sometimes good driving is fast. Sometimes fast driving is good. But the two are never inextricably linked. The one does not automatically equal the other.
Do you know,
It's about driving at the right speed at the right times.
When people try to drive fast on the road to impress me, it does not impress me. No. I'm like, no, just chill out. I'll be more impressed on the road by someone who can drive smooth and be far more alert to what's going on.
Most of us have had a situation like I know I have where I've been in a car at basically 200 mile an hour, perfectly safe. And I've been in a car at 40 mile an hour, fearing for my life.
Oh, yes.
Do you ever
minicab drivers, especially.
Italian ones, oh my word.
Now, here's a one. Have you ever found you've had many people who have come to drop their car off to review that have tried to impress you with their driving?
Yes.
Oh, God.
Does that happen quite a lot?
Not a lot.
No.
Okay.
But it can happen. And typically there is a conversation whereby I remind them that I am most impressed if they can give me a car that I can use after we're done with the drive-bys. So, and obviously after the events of earlier this year, I have upped the severity of the talk that I give people. And at the end of the day, all I tend to say to people is when we're doing the drive-by stuff, which is where this is, most relevant, if you're driving too fast, I can't use it. Or if I do use it and you get in trouble, I will throw you under a bus. I will hand over your numbers to the authorities if they ever ask me for them. They haven't ever. But, at the end of the day, you're driving to go on the internet.
Yeah.
So don't do any... Just imagine there's a copper stood next to me. Now an understanding, friendly copper, but still one with a job to do. And their job is to keep the roads safe for everybody.
I mean, look, there was the big example that was made of Joe Achilles years ago where he stuck a camera on the side of an R8 and drove over the speed limit. Snake pass. And I think they clocked him averaging around 120 miles an hour.
No, they did him for 83.
Oh, they did him 83. I was averaging 83 or something. But what they did is from the video, they were able to tell where he was, and they basically just looked at the distances that he travelled and the time it took him to travel on camera and used that to prosecute him.
Yep.
And that's the thing. So if someone is then driving up and down the road, if the police figure out, where that filming actually happened, they can then calculate what speed that person was doing.
Speed is just time and distance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so for anyone who is interested, the segments where James films the cars driving up and down the road, the way that we get the effect of speed is actually with some careful throttle management and gear selection. It's more about the sound that the car makes as it's going past, combined with the closeness of the camera angle or the height of the camera angle. It's all camera angles and sound effects, if you like, but sound effects provided by the actual car, if it actually makes a sound.
Any car that appears to be exceeding the speed limit, it's CGI. Whole thing. Good guy at LucasArts, he's great.
Also, if you're driving much faster than the speed limit, if you're driving any faster than actually at all than the speed on the road, you're a tit.
Basically.
Yeah.
And with that, we want to say a big thanks to all of you for tuning in. Have a safe and happy Christmas. Watch out for those snowy roads. They can be treacherous. And if the car's not turning, don't just keep turning the wheel. It won't help anything. And of course, make sure to comment down below if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're not and you want to write in, it's landlord@theradiatorarms.com. And we will see you next week on Monday morning at 7 o'clock, or possibly not, because we might be releasing a little differently timed special on account of the time of year. But we'll let you know when that's coming out. And either way, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you for the next one.
We are not a driving instructor. We do not give you advice. Everything you heard today is our own personal opinions. Your home is at risk if you do not keep repayments on your mortgage.
Bye.
Bye.